we move on to biodiversity data supporting policy optimization globally. And we are delighted to welcome our moderator, Juan Miguel González-Aranda, who will be joining us in just a minute. So to get the ball rolling, I would like to invite Joe Miller, CEO, Global Biodiversity Information Facility, GBIF, our co-organizers, co-conveners, and co-organizers of today's meetings. And Dr. González-Aranda is just with us. But while he prepares himself, I turn to Joe Miller. Joe, please take it away.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's great to be here today. It's kind of funny. I'm an American. I live in Europe. I have the delight to live in Europe and come back to the United States and be surrounded by my European and international friends. It's kind of fun. So thanks for having me today here at the Spanish Mission, for hosting us. In particular, it was great to have an introduction by Dr. Figueroa, who is the head of delegation of GBIF Spain, and her kind words there. Spain is a foundational member of GBIF, and along with LifeWatch, Eric, really strong members in Spain in both data mobilization and also capacity enhancement. So thank you, Dr. Figueroa, for attending as well. And other members of the GBIF network are online, of course, too. Thank you. So today I'd like to tell you a little bit about what GBIF is, and then describe a consultation we have ongoing now to better understand how GBIF data is used in the policy framework. So GBIF is the Global Biodiversity Information Facility. And we have this. So GBIF is an international network and data infrastructure funded by the world governments, aimed at providing anyone, anywhere, open access to data about all types of life on Earth. So we were born out of the OECD 20 years ago as an intergovernmental organization governed by a non-binding MOU. And really at the basic is what GBIF does. It puts together evidence of life on Earth. What, for example, if you're out in the savannas of the neotropics, as we just heard, and you saw some biodiversity, what is it, where is it, and when was it observed? That's really the core of what GBIF does. And it brings together this type of data from all over the world through this network of data providers and national organizations. This simple data model has been very powerful in order to us to easily combine data sets and make them interoperable, which is really the hardest part of the SPARE network. And by having a simple data model, we're able to develop that interoperability. We also realize it's not sufficient. So we're under a multi-year effort to enrich our data model so it's more complicated, but still easy to use, because biodiversity is more complex. And this line is from our new strategic framework that I really like. It's my favorite line in the framework. It says, biodiversity is more than occurrence of species in time and space. Organisms interact, co-occur, move, and evolve. And we're trying to bring this richness of data into GBIF with our partners. So GBIF manages data from our global network at the Secretariat in Copenhagen. We currently have 2.2 billion occurrence records from all over Earth. And we are combining nearly 76,000 data sets. This is really the power of interoperability. These are 76,000 individual data sets, but they emerged into one database that you can search across. So if you wanted to search for the distribution of the blue whales, you don't have to go to 76,000 data sets. You can go to GBIF and you can search across all those data sets. As I mentioned, we have country participants that are governing structure. There's 64 country participants. Many of them are on the call today. Colombia, Ecuador, Uruguay, Ghana, Canada, Nigeria, Spain, a very long list, but others that are not. And part of our endeavor is to bring all nations into our governance structure. I won't go into too much detail, but we also track the literature of the use of GBIF data. Every day, we have found evidence of at least 4 peer-reviewed publications that have used GBIF data. This is really a state-of-the-art tracking system that shows the value of sharing data in the scientific research area. And as I'll say, we're trying to show the same value in the policy realm. So although we have 64 countries in our governance structure, we have data from every country and data providers from almost every country. there are currently 132 countries and territories providing data to GBIF, and some very strong countries, Spain with the 4th highest, Colombia at number 2, very, very strong infrastructure, biodiversity all over the globe. And what GBIF is doing is bringing this data together and leveraging all these national endeavors. And this is just a heat map of the data we have in GBIF. And the red means that there is more data in this particular area. This does not mean that Europe is the most biodiverse place on the planet. What it does mean is that where there is money, there is data. And that's just a map with highly correlation of wealth and data. That does not mean that in, for example, in Africa and Asia, where there's not bright red, that we don't have data. We do have very important data. And that is currently under process of more data mobilization through specific projects to identify data that can have the biggest value and bring that into the global network. So we have data mobilization programs funded by the European Commission that are focusing on Sub-Saharan Africa, Latin American, Caribbean, and Pacific Islands, and another program from the Japanese Ministry of Science focusing on Asia. So this is a slide that kind of shows what GBIF does in 3 components. On the left is the sources of biodiversity, the evidence. The center is the infrastructure that maintains that in GBIF. And on the right side of the slide is the uses, or the evidence of biodiversity. So on the left, GBIF kind of was born out of the natural history collections community. So museums were original source of much data in GBIF. Now we get a majority of our data through citizen science projects, observations coming directly from citizen scientists. So these evidence come from many different places. Museums, we get data from the Natural History Museum in Montevideo, the University of Lagos in Nigeria, of course, from the Smithsonian and the museums in Spain, comes from all over the world. And these types of data are either specimens, observations, data that we pull from the literature, and this is a big part of our collaboration with LifeWatch. In this bicycle project is freeing the data from the literature and bringing that into the global commons. And even now from DNA evidence, which we think will be a big movement in the next few years. The power of GBIF is that we rely on this whole global community of collaborators to develop standards to share our data. And that's how we're able to make it interoperable. And of course, everything is open license, open for to be used. This is the access to biodiversity evidence. So over the last few years, we've added new ways for the community to use data. The major access is gbif.org, our portal, but people can use APIs, hosted portals. LifeWatch can take a feed from GBIF directly. There's lots of ways people can take data from GBIF. And we are interested in making it as easy as possible for people. Now, our governing board, we will meet in a couple of weeks in Brussels, and they are very interested and have told us they would like us to better understand and use GBIF-mediated data, this what, where, and when, in not only research, which we think we do quite well, but also in policy, because these are generally our governing board members are people in ministries that are also working on the goals of the Sustainable Development Goals. And they want to be able to see the value of the data flow from within the country into GBIF and back out. So GBIF is used, for example, the IUCN Red List. A large proportion of the IUCN Red List studies use GBIF-mediated data in their studies, and also used in the CBD, as we mentioned, if best, but also in many different thematic ways as well, to look at questions in food security, conservation, invasive species, human health, especially vector-borne diseases, which is, of course, a great interest, and climate. So a couple of years ago, we looked at how GBIF data is used in the literature and did this network analysis. And this was very informative to us for our planning. So not only is GBIF data, biodiversity data used in biology, but people having access to this open data are using it in chemistry, in earth sciences, in math and physics, social sciences, in medical sciences. So having open data allows for new types of data to analyses to come to the forefront. So this is a very simplistic diagram in which I like to think how GBIF data is used. So what GBIF mediates in our data store is this primary biodiversity data, the what, where, and when. And we're not alone doing this. Of course, we have our sister organization, OBIS, which mediates marine data. But this data for biodiversity then is used by biodiversity models, such as, so we've heard already today, the GEO group of Earth observations. And these models are used to assess biodiversity through the IPBES protocol to see if countries are making their commitments to the Convention of Biological Diversity. So we have the data are used to the models to make assessments on the commitments, which leads up to the Sustainable Development Goals. This sounds very straightforward, but of course it's not. It's much more complicated than that. This is a slide that was put together by a consultation that we are currently going through. And it is in the green box is where GBIF plays. We have a very structured lane that we want to stay in. We want to focus on the data. We don't want to make the models. We don't want to make the assessments, but we want to make sure the data is used in the best way possible through this whole value chain. So we have this consultation. And so this flow of data is not linear, as I suggested in the last slide. It's very complicated. There are multiple providers. There are multiple other aggregators, multiple types of data, not just GBIF data. And the kind of the cream box at the bottom, they're non-primary biodiversity data. By that, I mean satellite data, climatic data, and things like that are also used in the Sustainable Development Goals and the targets. So all these are put together by many different groups, such as Map of Life, GeoBond, into essential biodiversity variables that lead into the indicators that inform the decisions through the CBD and IPBES. So it's a very complex landscape. And we started this consultation to understand how GBIF data is used in that landscape and see if we can make the use better and see if we can provide data for this process, especially in lieu of the post-2020 framework of the CBD, which we are in now. So this study performed by VertNet, an international group, really identified 4 challenges. And these really weren't too much of a surprise to us, but it's good to get that outside view. One is transparency. I mentioned that we do track our data, but how the data is used after it leaves GBIF is not as transparent in the goals. We have a very good system for tracking in the research literature, but after it leaves GBIF, there isn't the culture of citation of data within the policy framework as there is in the research literature. Again, there are diversity of sources of data, which causes complications. There's also this non-linearity. Sometimes there's data that's used multiple times within in this process, and this lacks to a difficulty in traceability of how the data was used. For example, let's take the what should I pick on? So let's say the museum in Montevideo has put some data into GBIF, and at this point we can tell that museum which research papers are using the data from that museum. At this point, it's very difficult to say that this particular data point was used in the CBD project or in the IPBES assessment. We're trying to develop that value chain so we can track that data use right now. So we commissioned this study on the analysis of the biodiversity data needs of the post-2020 framework, essentially asking 4 questions, and it really goes around the data. So in the past framework, what data types have been used for primary biodiversity data? Also, which projects and products use that data? And also, what were the sources of the data for those projects? And then looking forward, what can be used in the future for policy? So the next 3 or 4 slides go through some recommendations by this working group on how GBIF and other primary data providers could improve to provide better data. And we have an open consultation now, and I'll put the link at the end, and I'll put it in the Zoom chat, where you can join the discussion and give us some advice on how we and other organizations like LifeWatch can join this process and make our data more usable. So first of all, one of the actions recommended by this team was best practices manual. This is something that we do quite a bit at GBIF, but we haven't yet done in this realm. So what are the best practices that will make the data more usable in data collection and data mobilization? Secondly, what are the best practices in transparency in data use? So after the data leaves the primary provider, can we help with the community developing systems of transparency? And this was mentioned by Juan Miguel. And transparency as well in tracking data is very important through various mechanisms. Another way that we could certainly help overcome challenge is focusing on monitoring activities, because we do know that monitoring activities at a single location give us this time series that is very, very important in meeting our biodiversity crisis needs. So looking for and bringing those types of data into the process, or even starting new ones. If we don't have them, let's get started on these community monitoring activities. Even if it's just monitoring moths in your backyard, this can be done through citizen science today. And this is kind of leads to the next point of identifying new and existing sources and help build the capacity in the communities. And this is something that we do not only through the Secretariat in Copenhagen, but more so at the national level. And Spain is a great example of this in Madrid. The Spanish node building capacity, not only in Spain, but in Latin America as well, of trained people in this data management for these type of work. Another recommendation that we have already started to implement is curated data sets that meet a particular standard. Let's say a particular EBV or essential biodiversity variable needs particular data format in order for it to be calculated. And we can make that process easier by having a clean data set formatted that way for that to use. We could do the same for a particular LifeWatch tool. What's the data flow you need? And we'll just make sure you get that exactly what you need. And that's something that we can do on the GBIF side. And as we've heard several times today already, we certainly need to include Indigenous peoples and local communities at all layers of this work, from research through to the policymakers. Another thing that we have heard, Declan did mention this, is encourage integration of private sector data, because there is a great amount of private sector data that is generated during the process of development that is not put into the public realm. And we're working closely with the Equator Principles to bring this data into the public arena. And then one way that our whole community has learned is to develop credit and attribution for the data and how it is used. We do a pretty good job of that in the scientific literature. We want to be able to do that in the policy literature as well. So we can tell, Dr. Figueroa that the data from the museums in Spain was used in this best assessment. We can do that. We just need to get all those pieces together. So this final slide is a slide on the consultation itself. I'll put this in the chat. We have this community forum on GBIF, which has several different threads on there, and also a recording of a webinar that we had that introduced this topic just this last Tuesday. This consultation is going on for another 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. In fact, we are very honored, very honored to collaborate with you because you are hard workers. That a real challenge is coordinating all data coming from everywhere, taking into account all the different aspects. And we are discovering that in our bicycle project, when we are collaborating together in supporting our contribution for this fairness of data to get this magnificent presentation that if you don't mind, please share.
Absolutely.
It's magnificent. Thank you very much. We have put everything to summarize in the same line of discussion what we'll be talking and take the moment right now.
Okay.
So thank you so much. Great things ahead, as Christos used to say as well. Based on this enthusiasm, I would like now to open the floor to Sanjay Kumar, who is the director of the CSIR-Institute of Himalayan Bioresources Technology. So, Mr. Kumar, are you there?
Hello.
Hello. Welcome. Thank you very much for coming.
Yeah.
Very honored to come on your relevant attendance here and participation, showing a place that where you are experiencing the real climate change effects. Sure.
Thank you.
Among other places, but particularly the Himalayan area.
All right. So first of all, many thanks for giving me this opportunity And can I share my presentation, please? Is that okay?
Presentation.
You can.
You can share, yes. No problem. Yeah. Just share it.
So could you see the presentation?
Yes. Yes, sure.
All right. So first of all, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. And just to give you a background that I belong to an organization known as Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, or CSIR. And this institute, this organization actually has the whole pan-India presence. So we have around 37 different institutions. Now, if you see the Indian scenario, I need not to highlight that we are the major mega biodiverse country. And we are, a lot of biodiversity hotspots, so many plants which have been documented. But more importantly, we are now part of the Global Convention on Biological Diversity, and we have the National Biodiversity Strategies and Action Plan in place. So to inform you, at central level, we have the National Biodiversity Authority. Then at the state level, we have the state biodiversity boards. And at local level, we have biodiversity management committees. So that's how we manage. And we also collaborate internationally, not only within nation, but internationally, whether it is through ASEAN or through SEPPOL or through UNEP or all these programs we participate internationally. So both nationally as well as internationally, we, are very serious as far as biodiversity conservation is concerned. And just to share one data, that more than 20% of our geographical area is under biodiversity, and therefore conservation is pretty good as far as India is concerned. And a very important thing I must share with you, that very recently we worked a lot onto the access benefit sharing on the traditional knowledge and as per the international norms. So these were some of the important things I thought I must share with you. Now, if you talk of because, as I have been listening since our deliberation started, that our biodiversity conservation has to be science-based. And within CSIR, we have 5 different areas on which we work: on microbial resources, plant resources, animal resources, ocean biodiversity, and the traditional knowledge. So these are the 5 major areas where we are working. And just to give you some idea onto that what sort of science we deploy. For example, if you talk of microbial diversity, then we have a center where we have several thousands of microbial strains in place. And we know how to do them proper storage, then deposition of maintenance of catalog, all those things are there. So microbial diversity, if you think, our organization is pretty strong in that. And if you talk of animal resources, so we have a lot of databases on the bioresources, and we do ground truthing, and also based on remote sensing and drone-based technologies. That is our strength. We do climate change studies on the biodiversity, how biodiversity is responding to climate change scenarios. Then we also focus on revival of water resources, because we feel that is one of the major areas where attention is needed. And then on sustainable bioeconomy, because unless we have some bioeconomy into the picture, I think things may not move, that people should know that what is the economic value of our biodiversity. So on bioeconomy front, we are doing pretty good. Well, now just to give you some glimpses that we conserve some for the rare and endangered species through botanical gardens. So more than 500 species we have done, this sort of conservation. Several orchids we have focused. And on plant sciences, if you see what sort of technologies we adopt, like, for example, ecological niche modeling, various methods of propagation that we deploy, and both micro as well as macro, so that, and here our focus is mostly on the threatened species, so that we are able to conserve them. Apart from plant, if you see our animal biodiversity, here we do work on reintroduction of species. We work on biobankings, whether it is on DNA, RNA, or sperms, or oocytes, or ovaries, all those things. Biobanking, we are pretty strong. And also on some reproductive technologies. For example, artificial insemination technology for black buck, spotted deer, and so on. So various methods how we can conserve our biodiversity, we are moving ahead. And also we developed some novel technologies, like if there is a disease prevalence in, for example, it is just to show you the example of frog. So we work quite effectively on host pathogen dynamics under natural scenarios. So appropriate marker development and things of that stuff we focus upon, right? Then also when we talk of genetic resources on animal side, we work, if there is captive breeding on some endangered species, does it affect the genetic base or not? So we work on that issue as well. Now, apart from animal, we go to the ocean science as well. So on ocean science, our organization work on, like, for example, in developing database on ocean biodiversity. And very importantly, particularly for coral monitoring, we have this coral monitoring robots, so that, we are regularly monitoring the coral health, because it's very important for our ocean health. And sea horses we are using as a flagship species for conservation of marine diversity. So ocean science, we are quite okay. And last very important thing, that, traditional knowledge. And we have more than 500,000 formulations for which we have the database. And if you see what we do with these databases, we try to link our traditional system of nomenclature with modern terminologies. So that is a major thing that we are doing. And also we are using these oral traditional knowledge into our database, because there is a lot of, in India, we have a lot of oral traditional knowledge, which we are trying to link and include into our database. And on policy issues, we feel that databases can be used as a very strong agent for defense and positive protection of our traditional knowledge. And also they can be instrument for protection of our genetic resources as well, so that, proper rights to the knowledge holder could be given. Now, just to give you some highlight that what we are committed in next 10 years, right? For example, we are saying that we should be restoring around 26 million hectares of degraded land. That is one of our major target. And also we want to create carbon sink to capture 2.5 to 3 million tons of carbon dioxide through afforestation. So that is one of our major objective. And importantly, one third thing I would like to share with you, that on access and benefit sharing, we want to give a lot of importance to our communities, because it is those communities who protect our biodiversity. Therefore, we are looking for some nature-based solution. For example, can we do with some organic agriculture or utilization of land as per land use delineation? Can we do that sort of thing? Can we protect or rehabilitate our land so that we can improve biodiversity? So we have focused on rehabilitation of land as well. And therefore, we are into integrated land and water management. So we feel that those areas are pretty important. And here we feel that the artificial intelligence, so that we have the biodiversity using satellite data and other methods of AI. Then we use Internet of Things, so that we can provide new opportunities to solve environmental problems. Then also on next generation remote sensing based on drone and the ground truthing, LIDAR, etc., so that we can do detailed and rapid mapping of bioresources, both at a local level and also at regional level. So therefore, we feel that, in coming next decade, I think funding is a very important issue. And for this funding, we don't say only one nation, but if it is an integrated funding, we feel that that will be very, very useful. And therefore, funding has to be how. So we feel that if we have a proper biodiversity finance planning, who understand that what is the country's need, if we had to do proper biodiversity conservation, based on that, we need to do funding. So that is important. And then we say that public fund, particularly from the industry, that should be made mandatory, that some part of their earnings should come for biodiversity conservation. We feel that is also important. And then if we align our national plans with the global framework, so that, one country does not work in isolation, but they work in close association with our international partners, so that, we can have some common goals and common outcomes also. And then fourth thing, we feel that if we have some community participation, and without community participation, it will be very difficult if we talk of biodiversity conservation, because it is these communities which help you, and they play very significant role if you talk of biodiversity conservation. And for this, if we follow a three-pronged approach, integrated conservation. Yes.
Kumar, one
Yes.
2 minutes more, please. Can you
Pardon?
finish? Can you finish in 2 minutes,
Yes.
please? Thank you.
Yes, I'm just finishing. So this is almost my last slide. So we feel that if we can do some integrated conservation for biodiversity, land and climate, and if we can do some networking and collaboration, I think that is now need of the time. And capacity building, that is one point which was missing. I thought we should include that capacity building point as well. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity and sharing some of our thoughts. Thank you so much.
So, thank you very much, Dr. Kumar, because you went through a lot of things we are sharing from LifeWatch Eric and the rest of colleagues. And India is a continent, let's say almost a continent. And you have covered all the micro, meso, and macro scale, taking into account that scale challenge as well as the heterogeneity of those resources. Congratulations for your very good work, because hard work, because it's very, very difficult to deal with everything. And you got all the biodiversity ecosystem varieties you can find there. So congratulations. On behalf of Christos and the rest of the executive board, we were looking forward to collaborating with you, with the premises of Joe here, GBIF, and other colleagues from the research infrastructures, and we are at your disposal for those collaborations. Some main aspects. Was very curious also to check Jose Manuel about agroecology. Later you can make mention of what he said. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you so much. And now we'd like to welcome my dearest friend, Dr. Torman. Josef Torman, are you there? From ASREN. Hello.
Yes. Yes.
How are you doing?
This is my friend.
So, our friend from the Arab States Research Education Network from Jordan, then. And so I would like you to just in 5, 7, 8 minutes, please, because we are in delay. We sincerely apologize because this is it's a cumulative delay, no? That's usual. That's news as well. It's a good indicator to show about that cooperation, your perspective, and how the infrastructure from Africa, the infrastructures, the infrastructure can support our collaboration. Over to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, I'm Josef Torman. Thank you indeed, my brother and friend Juan and the team, all of you, and special thanks also to Declan. To avoid wasting time, I know that we are late. I am first of all, I'm not a biodiversity man, nor my organization is a biodiversity institution. We are infrastructure facilitator. We are happy and we are keen to help and support research communities and more into services and infrastructure connectivity, but not the function of biodiversity itself. To demonstrate that, actually, now I'm speaking to you from Tanzania, Dar es Salaam. I have been just speaking today to the UMITSAT community on meteorology and how they can access multicast and broadcast data that's coming from satellite systems and so on. So we try to help all communities, not only biodiversity, not only climate and so on. I will skip all these slides because they are about research and education network, which are the dedicated networks that connect research institutions, research organization, hospitals, for example, anything who does research at the national level. Then at the regional level, ASREN is the player for that. I will come to a quick slide that represents that. So if you look at the structure of the research and education around the world, you will see that institutions are connected at the national level into a national network. In each country, you look at many continents. So if you look at my region, Algeria is connecting research and education institutions, and then they are connected all together into national network, then to ASREN, which is the regional network, and now we are all together represent the global networks so that we can facilitate the flow of data, access to resources, and so on through this network. This is how the research and education network development around the world. You see that most of the world has NREs, except maybe in Africa. There are many countries, and even Middle East, they lack NREs, and so on. ASREN is the regional research and education network that works for the Arab region, and represents also North Africa in the context of Africa Connect projects. I think our objectives, I already mentioned that, to facilitate, build a network that enables collaboration through services and support the development of infrastructure in each country, and also to get in touch and to engage with research communities to see how we can serve them like what we are doing now. Our areas of intervention are too diverse, starting from networks, dedicated networks, and research and education services. I will come to that in one slide. What we are about in UN SDGs, and through open science, through open access and open science platforms, that's what we are trying to promote and facilitate, actually, in addition to engaging with science communities like what we are doing again now. This is the Global Research and Education Network, and you see that giant Europe is in the heart of the network, and everyone is connected there. Our region is many countries are connected, but not all of them. So we are putting our effort to serve them, to connect. This is the educational roaming, as very quickly, I think it's a Wi-Fi, global Wi-Fi service that. So our region also, not all countries are connected, and they do not have that facility, but we are supporting them to, it's evolving actually. The same for EduGain, which is a global federation access system. Again, we are also not in very good shape compared to the world. Although our region is evolving, there are different levels of development in the Arab countries, depending on the politics. Sometimes like Syria or Libya or Yemen, but the other countries have some development, whether they are wealthy or not. We are now partnering with the world. I can say that we are confident that we know all of the world, and we have partnership with many organizations around the world. It's a project that has been funded by European Commission to provide connectivity to Euro-Mediterranean countries, and followed by Africa Connect 3, which is another project that provides services and connectivity. And they co-fund 80% of the cost of the connectivity to Europe. The project not only about connectivity, but also about services to bring communities together. This is another project that we are proud that we brought a lot of researchers together into one platform to use this the platform which is part of the Magic project, also funded by the European Commission. We try to, it's just a portal to provide information to how develop NREs, or how NREs can be used. I think you are not the target. The target are decision makers and those who want to develop NREs. But this is where we demonstrate how did we serve the community through our infrastructure. So we are demonstrating many stories, hundreds of stories of success in research in many topics, including biodiversity, how we could serve them to they use our network to collaborate and to produce this tremendous research and results. We are at ASREN looking at what is going on around the world, the global trends, priorities. Therefore, we are shaping ourselves now as and promoting ASREN as science cooperation facilitator. So we are working on science diplomacy, science engagement, and also we are adapting open science and open access that has been published and recommended by the UNESCO to the rest of the world. We are spending a lot of effort in open science. We are part of the European Open Science Cloud, which we are official member there. And we are trying to take this experience to our region to start our open science cloud in the Arab region. Therefore, we established our own cloud, and we are discussing with the global cloud providers to build our own cloud, two kinds of hybrid cloud. So our own cloud with cloud partnership with the global providers, so that we can provide more services to the communities, starting from cloud infrastructure as a service, GPU as a service, for example, federation as a service, and in case we need to have some kind of hubs or research hubs also, we will be able to provide that, especially that we want to build our Arab Open Science Cloud, which will require a lot of storage, a lot of cloud services. And we are
Dr. Torman,
I am done. So this is one of the sessions that we are doing during the summit. Another one, ASREN, also in the summit. I invite you to the conference of Open Internet Alliance and our conference in Amman, in Cairo. This is the last slide, which we are demonstrating how we are together as infrastructure providers to support collaboration. So this is a triangle of cooperation between Europe, Latin America, and Africa in biodiversity. And we have announced the Katowice Declaration to increase the collaboration to support Earth observation efforts, and we are happy to demonstrate to duplicate this for biodiversity, so that the three of us as infrastructure providers across the continents will be able to support this community. I think this is another story which is not very important. There are many opportunities in the region, which I don't have to go through them. There are many promisings in the region to support, to have good network, to support you, to support the collaboration between these organizations. It's general purpose, but it works also for biodiversity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Torman, dear Josef. Because we are accomplishing the mission does not reinvent the wheel, but we are using your services in order to engage to the Arab communities for biodiversity and all the powerful mechanisms, the ICT tools you got there to provide that interoperability with data, with the European Open Science Cloud, and this magnificent triangle you saw only with America, Africa, and Europe, in general terms, all the world, worldwide. Thank you very much. Shukran. And keep in touch because the coronavirus, we could resume our activity, but now it's time to, and I would like to announce that we are going to participate in that Arab Science Cooperation Summit that you're organizing the next 21, 22 of September. LifeWatch will be there, invited by you. Thank you very much for the invitation. And having said that, keep in touch. And now I will pass we are always taking time, that's to our dearest Dr. Ellwood. Yeah, Libby? Libby, are you there?
Yes, hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
How are you? Good, thanks.
Welcome from Kenny here because you joined with GBIF and TVWG, all our colleagues Disco, so they are brothers and sisters and brothers in the fighting, no? All of this.
Yeah, exactly.
Your expertise, and the floor is yours. What can I say? iDigBio is another golden resource for our activities. And please, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'll just jump right into sharing my screen here and let's see. Are you looking at the correct version of my slides?
Sure. Yes, we can
Great.
see that.
All right. It's a tremendous honor to be here and a pleasure to join you today. Thank you so much. I'll be speaking about how biodiversity data and the plethora of data associated with it provide information about species and ecosystems at scales that are impossible without data from natural history collections. Over the past 300 years, scientists have collected billions of specimens of organisms, making natural history collections the most complete record of life on Earth. And you could see there in the images, this ranges from plants to animals to marine organisms, and the ways that these are digitized include everything from a fairly straightforward imaging process to 3D images and to scans like you see in the top right, which are really at the forefront of how of the type of data that are available from natural history collections. And there are collections that are actively digitizing their specimens all around the world. That is, they're adding digital information to these physical specimens and then sharing it online with policymakers, with researchers, with educators, and with anybody from the public. All of these data are out there for everybody's use. The availability of digital information greatly enhances the ability to conduct research on biodiversity and inform some of the most fundamental questions that we're facing in biology. How are species distributed temporally, spatially, and ecologically? What factors lead to speciation, dispersal, and even extinction? What connections between biodiversity and ecosystems contribute to human welfare? From answers to these questions, the diversity of life on Earth, as well as potentially profound societal and economic consequences of global change, can be better understood. And Integrated Digitized Biocollections, or iDigBio, is funded by the United States National Science Foundation as the primary initiative to support groups of institutions that digitize specimen data by providing digitization and workforce training, developing cyber infrastructure to enable long-term preservation of data, and by promoting novel and traditional uses of collections data in research, education, and policymaking. To advance these efforts effectively, iDigBio also engages globally with the collections, data standards, and research communities. So while it's a US-funded organization, we do work globally. In addition to the physical specimen itself, as you saw in the last slide, records of biodiversity have been used in scientific publications and analyses. Of course, genetic sampling, you can sample from many collections, many of the physical collections, and even artwork and literature that contains information about specimens and species. Importantly, many of these exist in a digital format, and therefore we have the opportunity to link information about biodiversity across databases, such that analysis beginning with, let's say, a 200-year-old bird specimen, for example, can lead the researcher to studies that have used that specimen, to environmental data from the location where the specimen was collected, to genetic sequences from the specimen, to parasites of that species, and to other data pertinent to informing scientific research. So we have this vast resource. We have billions of specimens housed in collections all around the world, and each one of those contains a very, very rich network of additional information. Linking all of these data requires strong collaborations. So in order to link the data, we also need to link the people. Over the last decades, a number of biodiversity data portals and initiatives supporting biodiversity research have emerged, providing unprecedented access to natural history collections and other types of occurrence data. More recently, in the last several years, we have started to more formally collaborate in order to maximize our ability to provide standards-based data to the broadest audiences. So instead of working at national and regional scales, we can really more efficiently address today's wicked problems when we work globally. And one thing that's important to this is building the frameworks to support the global collaborations, and enhanced data sharing is fundamental to the success of linking biodiversity data and with connecting it to associated data. When we talk about and when we think about linking all of those data, we did get to think about that and created this figure here. This extensible network of information has recently been termed the digital extended specimen, and conceptualizing it has been one thing that this international group of biodiversity data folks has been working on. This concept builds off of work that is being developed in the United States and Europe, and GBIF is really particularly strong in leading with several projects that are greatly advancing this work, some of which Joe described earlier. From here, we are eager to develop, pilot, and begin to implement this model of linked data that is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, that follows the FAIR standards. Linking it and accessing these data is critical to having the baseline information across time, species, and geographies to address today's pressing problems. And to again quote the GBIF strategic framework that Joe mentioned too, we know that organisms interact, co-occur, move, and evolve. And it's not just about the time and place, but when you link these data, you can get to those deeper levels of information. And this robust, complex data model is required to be able to link all of those data. So you see here that orange base of the triangle, you have specimens. Once they're digitized in the middle, you greatly enhance their potential for then that digital extended specimen, which you see at the blue line up top, where data are curated and extended by community members and automated machine transaction all around the world. Access is open to authorized users, and then we can create much richer, deeper linked aggregated data sets and research products that can also then feed back into that data set. So it becomes a very robust system. And that is what we're currently working on. Thank you very much. And there's some of my information and that of iDigBio. Again, I appreciate your time.
Yeah, Dr. Ellwood, we are really, thank you very much for taking the time. In this very, short but very nice presentation, because the work developed behind is impressive. We know very well what you're doing in a coordinated way. Congratulations for coordinating everyone, the different standards, the different nature of the scans. It's a work itself, and we can't live without you. We cannot live without you. We need to be fed that with the big brother, sister here, JB, behind. We are together as a family, and these cooperations are working very fine. Bicycle and other projects are worldwide scale. And let me congratulate you, because you are the state of art of the application of technologies to foster, to strengthen all this knowledge. Thank you very much. I would like to clap.
Thank you so much.
Stay tuned and keep in touch. Thank you so much.